thanks to everyone from Sustainable Saratoga for pulling this together, and thank you, Wendy, for all the work that went into marketing the event. And I'm really honored to come and talk to you guys and hopefully get together, excited for a better spring. So let's see. So we're going to work off of this first slide. We're going to return to it to cover each topic. So the 5 principles of sustainable pollinator gardens is, what things differentiate how we garden and call it sustainable versus, how people have been doing things for the past century that's not really very sustainable. So I guess the first thing that we want to do is, stop using all chemicals. And so we have a video that demonstrates a way to kind of take care of about 90% of the problems that would drive someone to want to use chemicals. Wendy, if you want to show the video. All right, so you can see here the dump truck that's dumping a big load of compost. That using compost in the garden, you can make it yourself. You can, purchase it from one of our local vendors. That's going to answer about 90% of the problems that would drive someone to want to use chemicals in the first place. That's going to, give the plants strength to, overcome disease and even pest problems, even issues with, stuff eating the plants that if it's a, non-native insect, honestly, using compost will make that problem reduced. Okay, so going back to the slide, removing all invasive plants. Okay, next slide. The picture of, okay, so you can see here, we have a lot of Japanese barberry in this region. I would say it's the #1 invasive plant that I see in people's gardens. The other one is burning bush. This is a great way to handle it. Dig them out of the ground, put them in trash bags or lawn bags by the side of the road. That's, invasive plants are just, they're bad for the environment. People didn't always realize, what they were doing, but planting anything that's, didn't originate in this region is a little bit risky. It might end up becoming an invasive plant at some point later. So yeah, that's a really great way to deal with it. Just bag them up and get them out of your garden. That's not how all introduced plants need to be dealt with. Plants that are, somebody's, I don't know, like their grandmother's rose bush or something, sentimental plants can stay put. Okay, back to the slide. The next bullet point is number 3. We want to plant only native plants when you're adding to existing gardens. So number 3. So the next few slides, I have some examples of what some native plants are. Here's a garden in Burnt Hills. There's a lot of blue mist flower and Joe Pye weed. Next slide. Here's a house in Round Lake that's a giant ironweed in the front yard. It's not for everyone. That's not a plant that fits every location, but it can be like 12 or 13 feet tall. So sometimes it's the right place for it. Okay, next slide. Okay, that's swamp milkweed. We grow and sell 3 different kinds of milkweed. People are usually pretty familiar with common milkweed. This is swamp milkweed. It's Asclepias incarnata, and monarch butterflies also use this one. Okay, next slide. Okay, that's skullcap, Scutellaria incana, and that's a I can't think of it, a hummingbird moth. It's a little difficult to see in the photo, but yeah, it's neat when you start having, you know, native plants in the garden. It's neat what pollinators show up. Next slide. Okay, this is black cohosh. This is in a garden pretty near the track downtown Saratoga. It's a shade-loving plant. Okay, next slide. This is blue lupine. You know, the Albany Pine Bush and Wilton Wildlife Preserve being local. This is a big, with the Carner blue butterfly, you know, conservation effort. This is a important plant for our locale. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is a garden in Queensbury. This is the day that it was planted, and then the next slide is about a year later. Yeah, this is what it looks like after a year. So that's, let's see, there's some wild quinine in there. There's some coneflower, some cardinal lobelia. And next slide. Okay, there's a garden that's by Saratoga Lake. It's kind of a quarter of an acre in the front yard, and it's all wildflowers. It's kind of neat to see how they all act when they're together in such a site. Okay, next slide. Okay, that's Philopendula rubra. That's another great native plant. It can go between shady and sunny sites. It can tolerate a lot of shade. Next slide. That's a close-up of blue mist flower. That's in the Eupatorium family, and it's very beloved of the pollinators. Next slide. Okay, there's boneset. That's another Eupatorium. This is a garden also kind of near the track in Saratoga. I can see some liatris there as well. Okay, and we might be, okay, let's go back to the outline. We're gonna talk about the 4th concept. Number 4 is that we wanna reduce our carbon footprint any way that's possible. We wanna do things by hand and not with machinery. So one method that I'm gonna demonstrate by the slides is to use, and we already talked about compost, is to use lasagna gardens. It's a organic no-till method of developing new garden beds on existing turf grass, and also using more perennials and less annuals in, you know, in landscaping that's going to be permanent. You know, that's a principle that, you know, vegetable gardens are a separate thing. That's, you know, it's agriculture, it's for growing food, but for landscapes that are, you know, permanently in one place, it's better for the pollinators. It's definitely better for the soil structure to not be pulling annual plants out every year and replanting, but just to use perennials is a lot better environmentally. So Wendy, if you could go to the slide where we left off. All right, so this is on Nelson Avenue in Saratoga. It's pretty near the Mexican Connection. So this is what the garden was like when we began the work. And so I kind of have a series here. The next slide shows, that's my husband helping me build a little rock border as we put the compost around. The next slide is the day that we planted, 100% native plants. And then the next couple slides kind of show a few months later what it looks like after it's filled in. So if if you're walking in that neighborhood, the garden's alive. There's so many pollinators, birds, butterflies. It's so much life motion, and so different from before it was, the bare ground, and it really changed pretty quickly. Then I have one more example of the lasagna gardening. Oh, okay, this is the same garden on Nelson Avenue. Next slide. Okay, so this is a pool in Wilton, and it's a little bit shady, and it's on the wet side. The soil does have, a lot of water, but it's definitely like the Wilton sand. It's not by any stretch of the imagination nice soil. So if you show the next slide, it's the Lasagna Process. This is what it looks like as we, build into a new bed. You just put down cardboard and then put compost right on top of the cardboard. And then in the last slide, that might be a year later. That's, the garden just grows really well right out of, so using the lasagna garden method, we are reducing the carbon footprint. We're not using any machinery to till or anything. And it's really, really healthy for the soil to keep the structure intact, to just build on top of what's already there. I guess the last point, we don't have to go back. We could just stay at this slide. The last point is to reduce water use. And when you're gardening in this way, when you're using perennials, when you're respecting the soil structure by doing methods like the lasagna garden no-till method, it reduces water over time. Native plants don't need to be watered. They only they just use the rainfall. It's adequate for their needs. I guess we're pretty close to the question part. I guess just to review the 5 concepts: stop using all chemicals, because can't really call what we're doing sustainable if we're using toxic or poisonous chemicals at all. Removing all invasive plants is key to building the kind of environment we want. We want to, at least in our homes where we can control it, we want to get, identify all plant species that are invasive and get them out. Then when adding new plants to the gardens, just make sure that the species we pick are native. And reducing the carbon footprint, number 4. And number 5, reducing water use. So I guess that's kind of about what I had to share. I would, open it up for questions if anybody has anything.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Jessie. That's great. Here, there's some questions. Let me. Yeah, so someone asked if you could explain in a little bit more detail the lasagna method with the cardboard and the compost.
Okay. should we go back to the slide where to demonstrate the one at the pool where there's, you can see the cardboard and then the compost on top of it?
How's that?
That's it. Yep. So it's really simple. You just pick out where you want the garden to be. I mean, some people will use string to delineate, you know, the line that they want to draw. Garden is in here, the garden, you know, is not on this part of the lawn. And then, you know, you have to collect the cardboard ahead of time. I always, you know, remove all the tape. Some cardboard has staples. You can have a much easier time if you can get bigger pieces of cardboard. When you have small pieces of cardboard, you end up kind of doing a jigsaw puzzle, and the wind can interrupt. But you just want to, once you have it down, then you want to put, you know, wherever you've acquired your compost, or I mean, wood chips work as well. I like compost because it just, it's so completely nutritious. It's everything that the garden's going to need forever. It's yeah, really clean way to do it. And you just load it on top about 2 to 3 inches, all so that there's no cardboard showing at all. And then you wait a week. You can wait longer than that, but after a week, the garden is ready to plant. You can just dig, your shovel will go right into the cardboard. Yeah, I don't know why more landscapers don't use this method, because it works really well. It's a lot easier to do than, you know, removing all that grass, and it's much healthier for the soil. You get a better results.
Okay, great. Another question was whether or not you fertilize.
If you're using compost and native plants, you don't need to fertilize. Yeah, you know, native plants, you know, they co-evolved in this climate. They kind of make their own fertilizer over time, and the compost will give them everything they need for the first couple years. And when they're mature, it's kind of neat. They actually pull the minerals out of the atmosphere that they need. It's kind of new, easier way of gardening for sure.
Someone asked if you could share a list of invasive plants.
I know that Cornell Cooperative Extension has the Prism. It's like an outfit within Cornell that's entirely dedicated to them. I mean, common invasive plants in Saratoga are, you know, I showed the photo of the Japanese barberry on its way out. Also the burning bush. In Saratoga, we have a problem with goutweed, also known as bishop's weed. It has like spaghetti-like roots, and it's all over downtown people's yards. It grows between people's yards. We also have Japanese knotweed is pretty bad in this region. I know the area where the farmers market is on High Rock, there's like a solid quarter mile behind the market, where behind the park, it's pure knotweed. It's like nothing but knotweed. I noticed, I haven't been keeping up with the comments. I noticed someone said something about the medicinal use of some of the native plants. It's interesting that a lot of the invasive plants also have medicinal use. In fact, Japanese knotweed is the #1 herbal remedy used to treat Lyme disease, my herbalist friends tell me. So I don't know, dig it up and figure out how to use it. I don't know. Yeah. Those are kind of the top 4. There is a lot. I mean, there's colt's foot is kind of bad in some areas around here. I would defer to Prism's wisdom, the Cornell Cooperative's Prism. They're really good. I mean, they'll have on their website, they have photos of the invasive plants. Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. Joy. Hi, Joy. Yes, honeysuckle. There is native honeysuckle, but most of what we have, yes, I should have mentioned that. Japanese honeysuckle is an invasive. It's an interesting one. You know, Japanese honeysuckle was just an innocuous garden plant in this country for like 80 years. It was in the 1800s. You know, people would be very proud. They would have their, you know, it would show how worldly they were, that they'd have their Japanese honeysuckle in their garden. And it finally made the leap in the, I think, the late 1800s. And now it's one of the worst plants that our federal government spends trillions of dollars on invasive control every year. So the process of a plant becoming invasive is really mysterious. We don't know how, we don't have a good model to predict what's going to happen. You know, a couple degrees different in temperature one year, or just, you know, the climate's fluctuating. The really planting new plants in our gardens that are not native, I mean, it's really playing ecological roulette because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we know some things. We know that butterfly bush, you know, Buddleia is probably going to be one of the up and coming future invasives, and probably Japanese spirea that started to make the jump from people's gardens to be more pervasive in the landscape. But yeah, the easiest way is just when adding new things, make sure that you know what you're getting. If you're buying it from, you know, a big box store, I mean, bring your smartphone and look on, you know, Lady Bird Johnson's website, wildflower.org, you know, investigate the plants that you're buying, because, you know, this is the only planet we get. Yeah, any more questions?
Question about with the lasagna method, is it better to plant in 100% compost or a good quality soil, or a mix? So when you do your gardens,
I use 100% compost. Yeah, there's not a lot of benefit to using topsoil for anything other than potting. If you're just planting in the ground, compost is really what you want to add.
and when you do the lasagna method, you plant the starter plants, do you do that on top of the cardboard, or do you make holes in the cardboard to plant them?
Yeah, we cut through it.
Mm-hmm.
So where we're planting, I should do a video on this sometime. So where we're planting, you know, it's localized right in the spot. Your shovel will go through if it's, you know, a week or more after you initially did the lasagna preparation. The shovel will go right through the cardboard, and yeah, I always make the top of the plant exactly even to the top of the, you know, where the compost is, so it's flat across the top. I'm a little OCD, and the people that work with me get to hear about it when there's unevenness. But you know, it's good. The plants like to be, you know, kind of have a uniform top, I guess.
Okay. How long does it take for the cardboard usually to break down?
I don't usually go back and check. I mean, it's ready to be planted after a week, and I think it might take a whole year for the cardboard to completely degrade. Mm-hmm. But once it's under there, you can't see it. You know, if you look at the bed, if you put a thick enough layer on top of it, it just looks like there's a new bed. You can't really see it. I think, yeah, about a year, it's probably becomes another layer of the compost, I guess.
How do you have any recommendations for places to get high quality compost?
There's a few good vendors around. Yeah, perhaps I can follow up with a list.
Okay, that'd be great.
I mean, there's a number of places you can make your own. It's, you know, just a game of patience to make your own, but there's a number of of high quality places where it's available.
Jesse, you just mentioned putting together a list. You had some wonderful photos of the native plants, ones that we all want to love and plant. Is there, could you provide a list after the fact, after the meeting?
Oh, sure. A list of the plants?
Yeah, so you had some great pictures, but of course, you know, did I spell anything right? I don't know. So therefore, just a text list would be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. The photos here, it was like a small sampling. Like there's so many native plants. Would you like a larger list possibly?
Sure, a larger list would be great. Whatever you, I'm sure you probably have resources at the ready. Hopefully I'm not asking for anything, you know, making a big ask. So thank you.
Yeah, and we can make sure that goes on our social media. We can, you know, put a post up there in the coming days, and then I can also put a link to it on the website. So we can get that available. And then you can also just email me as well too, if you just want the list, and I can email it to you. Yeah.
Thanks, Wendy.
Yeah. Here's a question about shady yards. What specific recommendations for really shady yards, and also what's good in fairly shady, high traffic areas, like that sort of, that's hardy to be between that sort of sidewalk and street, little lawn?
Oh, the house strips. A shady house strip. So you want it to be salt tolerant as well as shade tolerant. Heartleaf aster is a really great go-to. It's also called bluewood aster or aster cordifolia. See, probably Allium cernum, nodding onion is pretty tolerant of such spaces. Yeah, I would think about that a little more. Maybe oxeye sunflower, believe it or not, is pretty shade tolerant, and I mean it can grow anywhere. The blue mist flower, we had a couple slides of that. I mean, throw that on top of your roof, it would grow. I mean, it would grow anywhere. Grow in your bathroom. Yeah, there's others. If you wanted like a grass for an area like that, there's some sedges, like Pennsylvania sedge, a couple other sedges that would do a really nice job. Yeah, there's a lot to the shade garden. Like there's so many plants that it's a whole nother world of shade, woodland natives. There's as many shade tolerant native plants as there is that love sun. It's pretty neat.
Okay, and I see, thank you, Laura. Somebody put in the chat box the web address for PRISM, so you can check that out, anybody that was interested in the invasive species. And we're hoping, we're in the process of scheduling one of the PRISM folks to come and talk to us about invasive plants in June. So be on the lookout for that coming up as well. And I think, oh, thank you, Rick. Also gave a list of some invasives. So that resource is up here for anybody that wants to look more into that. Somebody want to know where we can get black cohosh, and can it survive in almost full shade?
Okay, it can survive in almost full shade, and I believe we'll have that available for sale from our nursery. That's one that it's a little bit hit or miss, but we are launching this May direct purchase, contact-free pickup with a $300 minimum purchase plants from our nursery here in Boston Spa. And yeah, if we have enough black cohosh, we will certainly list it for sale.
Okay. Christine, I will get in touch with you about the pollinator garden. Thank you very much. I look forward to hearing more about your interest in working on that project. We're super excited to get it going. The next one is a question about burning bush. Why is it discouraged? It doesn't seem invasive.
Oh, it is invasive. Yeah, it might be number 2 on the DEC's worst offenders list. It's invasive.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have an aunt who's a forester in the Berkshires, and there's regions of the forests that she works in. The burning bush is just, I mean, there's half a mile. It's just grows in groves, really. It's very spready.
There's some areas on Skidmore's campus over in the Northwoods that if you walk in there in the fall, it is just lit up red.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's definitely some areas where you can see a lot of that. Oh, Mary mentioned that. I'm scrolling through the comments. The Skidmore has a lot of burning bush. Another list, thank you, Robin, for some more information on invasive species. And then, oh, here's a question, is butterfly bush invasive?
In Connecticut, it's considered invasive right now,
Mhm.
which probably means we're next. It's ecologists are kind of watching it.
Mhm.
Yeah, the buddleia, it's kind of like future invasive considered right now.
Mhm.
It's still legal to sell it. I don't use it. If I'm working in someone's garden and they have buddleia or butterfly bush, it's technically not yet invasive, so I don't. If they're attached to it, I don't push at all. Just I understand that people feel sentimental about plants, and if it's not technically invasive yet, I can understand. But adding new, it's not. I would definitely don't recommend to add a new butterfly bush anywhere.
Mhm. Okay. Here's a question. Do you cover the compost with wood chips once you lay that down?
No, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, if you use wood chips, if that's all that you're using, that's enough. But the compost, you might as well let it breathe. You'll have less problems with I mean, you can. I don't anymore. I've in fact stopped using wood chips or wood mulch altogether. It's just simpler. The compost interacts really well with the soil, and the plants love it. They love being surrounded completely by compost. So that's what I do. I mean, other people do different things.
We've got somebody that recommends Booth's topsoil and compost as being high quality, and then somebody recommending the Adirondack Pollinator Project sells native plant plugs. Couple more comments about burning bush being highly invasive and prolific cedar, and very shade tolerant. Yep, the Skidmore woods for sure. As evidence of that. Here's a question on Lily of the Valley. Is that invasive? It's beautiful, but it seems to be invasive. And how do you get rid of it?
You know what? I'm going to table that question and get back to you. Let me not answer that. I need to do more research on that one.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What about, the little Dutch white clover? Do you consider that a friend or a foe?
Well, it's not native, but I don't know that I consider it a foe. It's
nice,
especially if
Mhm.
especially if people are growing like vegetable gardens and they want to have they want to improve the soil beforehand. That it makes a really nice how do you say, like a first
living mulch, you can use it as a living mulch.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be a permanent, a permanent thing, there's native ground covers that do that too. The Connect is living mulch. Yeah, I'm okay with clover. If people, sometimes I even plant it sometimes. Usually in situations where it's not going to be the permanent, thing to be there, like just to improve bad soil. Clover does a really good job.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Here's a suggestion for burning bush is to invest in some blueberry bushes instead, and the leaves will turn nice and red in the fall. And then here's a question. So if you were to dig out a yard border of invasive shrubs, what would you recommend as a replacement for them?
Oh, of burning bush?
They didn't specify, but probably.
Okay. I mean, there are so many amazing native shrubs. There's, I could say 30 or 40 different kinds off the top of my head almost. There's, so it depends on, the site. If it's shady, there's a lot of different wonderful viburnums. There's elderberry. It depends. Yeah, it really depends on the site. If it's a wet site, 9-bark is wonderful. There's serviceberry. That's Amalanchier, it's called. If you really want fruits, I mean, there's hazelnut, American hazelnut. There's red or black chokeberry is wonderful. I have a red chokeberry in my garden here, and the black chokeberry is excellent. There's really nice, what's that called? It's like a leaf, Aesculus. Okay, buckeye. Bottle brush buckeye is a wonderful native shrub. I mean, there's so many. It's really just with shrubs, it's just what can you find? Because there's not really open to the public like I have a wholesaler I can access shrubs from, but most homeowners don't really have access to a lot of native shrubs. Yeah, if someone ever wanted to open a business that just carried native shrubs, there's tons to pick from, and there's nobody else doing it in Saratoga County.
Okay, that sounds like a good new business venture for somebody on this webinar.
Yes, please, someone do it. I will buy shrubs from you.
So would I. How about, do you ever plant bulbs?
I mean, there's native bulbs that I plant. There's Beatrice is a native bulb that I plant. Then there's allium, the nodding onion. Those are pretty well the native bulbs I know of. There is some, these aren't really bulbs, but there's native iris. I've never seen it sold in bulb form before. Now I don't have a problem with things like daffodil. They've done a unique job of naturalizing in our climate. The tulips just get eaten if you have any rodents around. I mean, you're just here you go, a buffet, guys. Like tulips, don't last that long. But I'm okay with daffodils, and in fact, by request, I'll plant those for my clients. It doesn't seem like daffodils are ever going to get invasive, and they're nice. Like they have color when not a lot of other things do. They're pretty early, April. There's not a lot of native stuff flowering right then.
This one, I'm going to combine these into one question. Is Creeping Charlie invasive, and what native ground covers do you recommend?
Yeah, the ground ivy, or by its less PC name, creeping Charlie, is invasive. There's a lot of really cool native ground covers. Pakara aurea, also known as golden ragwort. That's a really great one. It's a little taller than a ground cover, but mayapple is a native ground cover. It's really nice. It's assertive, so don't plant it anywhere that you don't mind a little spreading. Let's see, I like foam flower for a shady site. I've just started last year experimenting with Blephila. It's like a wood mint ground cover. That actually would probably do a really good job replacing the ground ivy. It's because it's in the mint family. It's it smells like mint, ground mint, Blephila. That's so it'll do a nice spreading thing, which might be the reason why anyone would want the ground ivy. I have definitely dug a lot of ground ivy out of a lot of sites, so.
Here's a question. Have you heard of butterfly bush not providing enough nutrients for butterflies?
Well, I mean, nectar is a cheap trick. I can go in my kitchen and mix up some sugar and water and put it out. And I mean, nectar, you know, the needs of adult butterflies are a little bit less than caterpillars. When we talk really deeply about butterfly gardening, that's what we're talking about, is providing for the caterpillars. The species, for their whole life cycle, they have almost a monogamous relationship with certain plant families. Like everybody knows about, milkweed and monarchs, but there's lots of other relationships like that. There's the buckeyes only can make their living on plantain. There's I'm thinking of violets and fritillary butterflies, the great spangled fritillary butterflies. When you can tell lawns that people don't remove their violets, don't do anything to treat, they'll have a lot more fritillary butterflies around. It's kind of neat. And there's all kinds of relationships like that. I think there's coneflower and aster, and then there's the pearl crescent and I can't think of the other one. There's two different butterflies, and each is for each aster and coneflower. I won't think of it right now. I'll think of it later. I'll email you, Wendy. Okay. But the specialization of that caterpillars, their mouth parts are, that actually eating leaves is really difficult. If humans can't digest most of these plants at all, and it took probably centuries for the caterpillars to develop, like to actually change their own physiology so they can digest each specific plant. So to go back to the original question, it's not enough for a plant like butterfly bush. It does have nectar. It's just not enough to really give butterflies what they need to make their living. We have to give them what they need for the caterpillars to survive. And that extends beyond just caterpillars as well. Like most birds, like 96% of birds need caterpillars, not just any pollinators, not just any bugs. They specifically need caterpillars for their, to feed their young. So if we want to have a complete ecosystem, we really can do better than, just non-native nectar plants. it's really not bringing enough support to our ecosystem.
Somebody asked, what is in the current picture that I have up? What is this plant again?
Oh, that's New York ironweed.
Great. And then it looks like, oh, somebody mentioned the black swallowtail. They like dill and parsley and Queen Anne's lace.
Yeah, there's native plants that they eat as well.
Mhm.
They go for okay, Zizia aurea is the Latin, and yeah, Golden Alexander is the English. So it's really interesting when you have the native plants that they like. It's interesting to see them. It takes a couple generations, because in America, mostly what they have access to is the non-native stuff, the dill, Queen Anne's lace is actually invasive. It's not, it's not one of the top 10 or anything, but it's definitely prolific. It's pervasive in the landscape, they say. So it's neat to add the native stuff and see the caterpillars start to go for that. I had swallowtail caterpillars on my Golden Alexander in the nursery this year. So I was so happy to see that. I actually planted some as soon as I saw that. I planted some in my new garden here. So I hope in the coming years to see them in the garden too, not just in the nursery.
Great. Let's see, I think I missed one. Oh, what do you think about planting gardens specifically for the Karner blue butterfly in town?
Oh, I love that idea. Oh, that's really nice. So that wouldn't work at every site. The blue lupine is one of the fussiest plants I know of. It actually absolutely has to have dry feet and sand. Basically, if you've visited the Wilton Wildlife Preserve, really sandy, dry soil is what it needs. But yeah, I love that idea.
Anybody else have any last questions? Okay. Do you want to go through, would it be helpful if you looked at the slides again and just did one last pass on naming them for anybody that saw something and fell in love?
Sure.
Let's see.
Okay, in that slide, we can see black-eyed Susan and coneflower. And the tall plant that's right next to me is just about to flower. And it's so beautiful when it flowers. That's called Helenium. And I believe that one is red shades, Helena red shades. That's a really, really pretty one when it flowers. It's red and orange and yellow, and it changes through the course of the month and a half that it flowers. It's all different colors.
Cool. And then there's some spiky things. Is that the liatris?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
How about the light yellow, maybe? Is that?
That's yarrow.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Those are all little.
So that's bone set. The Latin is Eupatorium perfoliatum. That's blue mist flower, Eupatorium colestinum, also known as Conoclinium colestinum, but blue mist flower. It's much better known down in the gardens in Long Island. People are much more familiar with that plant than they are here. Okay, Philopendula, or Queen of the Prairie. I can see blue lobelia up front there. The big white shrub on the left or on the right there. Oh no, that's not a shrub. That's more bone set actually. Phlox, I see. Phlox maculata.
Looks like is that one of the blue stems maybe?
Yep, big blue stem grass. Well, there's existing hydrangea there on the left. I didn't plant that, but I don't mind hydrangea. Let's see, wild quinine is the plant that's white and kind of in the middle. I can see some cardinal lobelia in the back, like in the center of the back. That's the red flower. Hummingbirds just love that. I can see some ironweed. I don't know if that's in the, yep, where the cursor is. Yep, that's ironweed. That's during planting, all the babies. Now that's blue lupine. I believe that the lupine that grows in the Wilton Wildlife Preserve looks a little bit different. I think it has less leaves. But it's the same general look. That's black cohosh, also known as Simicifuga racemosa. Skullcap or Scutularia. Swamp milkweed or Asclepias incarnata. And that's giant ironweed, Vernonia. So that's the blue mist flower, and I think that's Joe Pye. Yeah, Joe Pye weed. Might be the dwarf, Eupatorium dubium. Yeah.
All right, any last questions? Okay, well, great. Thank you everybody for coming, and thank you, Jesse, for all this great information. And for anybody that's interested in pollinators and native plants, get in touch with us if you're interested in joining our pollinator initiative. And if you have any follow-up questions for Jesse, be sure to let me know and I will pass them along to her. Thank you, everybody.